Hi, everyone. My name is Ivy Reiss, and thank you for joining us for this exclusive event, Poetic Performances, hosted by the Mississauga Arts Council. Today, we'll be featuring poet Keith Garebian and special guest poet Michelle Hillyard. For anyone who is missing this event live or tuning in late, we will be recording it, and it will be up in the next day. And each poet will be followed by a question and answer period. And we'll be giving a bit of description on their poems. So I really want to encourage everybody to have a question or two that they want to ask either Keith or Michelle at the end of their respective readings. And we're going to first start right now with Keith Garebian. I'll tell you a bit about him. So Keith Garebian first made his reputation as a freelance literary and theater critic. He turned seriously to writing poetry only after publishing his memoir, Pain, Journeys Around My Parents, in 2000, about his Armenian father, Anglo-Indian mother, and Bombay background. His father is also an Armenian genocide survivor, which definitely informed this memoir very deeply. Now to date, he has 27 books, 8 of which are poetry collections, including Frida, Paint Me, as a Volcano, and Blue, the Derek Jarman poems, Children of Ararat, Poetry is Blood, and his latest poetry collection, which he will be reading poems from, called Against Forgetting, launched by Frontenac Press in fall 2019. Writer-photographer Catherine MacDonald ranks Poetry is Blood among the best contemporary examples of poetry of witness, while poet and editor Alana Wolf calls Against Forgetting a sage and unglazed portrait from birth to present of soul, trying to break through the words peculiar, slant, memory, inclinations, surfaces, enchanted of the self. His numerous awards include his appointment in 2000 by the Mississauga Public Library as a first critic at large by any Canadian city. He was commissioned to post book, theater, and dance reviews, an appointment that lasted for 3 years. In 2019, he was selected to serve as a literary mentor for the Emergence Program in Mississauga. His poetry has been published worldwide. Everybody, please welcome Keith Garebian.
Keith.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. All right. My reading is divided into 2 parts. The first part will be poems from an unpublished manuscript, which is being considered by 2 publishers at the moment, called In the Bowl of My Eye, which is really about living in suburbia. I live on Lakeshore Road East on the very border of Etobicoke and Mississauga. So the lake is right outside my window, along with a huge park. I'm going to read from the first part of that manuscript, which is really suburban portraits. And these are real people in most instances. So the first one is Monday Watcher, which is I just got notified it's been accepted for publication in a forthcoming anthology. Actually, it's coming out next month, called Old Bones and Battered Bookends. And this is about an old Chinese widow. Actually, I bought the apartment I live in from her. She used to sit by the window and rock in her rocking chair and watch the lake, etc., etc. Monday Watcher. Chinese widow by a window overlooking park and lake, rocking gently at the Monday world outside. Grime mounts on furniture. Maids are cleaning for other widows. But she sits, watches, while birds are hectic in their trees. Breadwinners surge to work. Yellow school buses load kids loud with gossip about their weekend. The window doesn't matter in itself, but it is her favorite. Always something to see. The 3 children in Hong Kong summon her to return, thinking she is much too lonely in her widowhood. She rocks in meditation. What shall she say of today? There's nothing sad here by the lake. What she sees best is close. To return where they need her is to lose herself, vanish and begin again. She does not miss the card games, mahjong, tea rituals, yum-cha, casinos. She does not mind the cracked bathtub or peeling walls. Those wounds are not hers. her heart strong, lips soundless, she prays to moving clouds. Now, the next one, the bench was based on a real bench donated by the family, which was put in our front lobby. This one was published in the Bannister, volume 33. A wooden bench varnished in the front lobby. A bronze plate reads, "In loving memory of Frederick Ashby, 1913 to 2008, Irene Ashby, 1915 to 2009, nothing more." I remember him slumped over the steering wheel of a small red car in the indoor garage. Passenger side door open as if he had meant to step out. He looked dead, but had merely fallen asleep with exhaustion. The car had a huge dent front side, result of his inability to steer clearly. When we had passed each other in the building, he was already gravely stooped, as if bent on touching the floor with his age. Had a thin mustache gone grey, and smiled weakly, a long-lived scrawny plant drying out in its pot. The condo posted a brief notice of his passing, as if he had gone on a long journey somewhere remote. I don't recall his widow. Perhaps she was long invalided, chronic recluse. Or perhaps I missed her as she waited, always waited for death, postponing hers a year after his. Their absent children donated the bench, a place to pause and sit, as outside, people rush over the small bridge with the gurgling creek under. Now, we all know that every suburb has a rash of malls.
Yes.
This one is called Suburban Mall. It won honorable mention in the W.H. Drummond Poetry Contest last year, 2019.
Oh, nice.
And it starts with a prologue from Gertrude Stein. Some live a dull way of living very quickly, and they are not then certain that they are living a dull way of living. Some are coming to know very well that they are living in a very dull way of living. Please go shopping. Never close enough for some of the yellow homes floating amid clipped green lawns smooth as billiard tables. The mall is an air-conditioned hive. Busy shoppers come on wheels as quick as winged gods, equipped with magic plastic, swift elixir of commodity. Bodies gliding in silk or cotton, legs strut on gleaming tile, faces show a grid of whims, excitement surging for special sales. A calculated turning of the mind to fulfill yearning at a price that is not too much to pay. Consumer love floats across clean architecture. They move, they compile. New jewelry, leather, deodorant. They stalk the aisles, bargain bins where knots of pleasure grow. Minds are tossing money. Best intentions clamor in monologues with themselves. What would Martha Stewart do? Hesitation is mortal sin. Bright lipstick eliminates doubt. So does Chanel. Bliss is everywhere, swaggering to tomorrow in fleece, gold, and guiltless.
Very good.
The next one was published in a special chapbook by the League of Canadian Poets. It's called The Old Lovers, and it's based on a real senior same-sex couple in my building. I've changed one name.
What's the title?
The Old Lovers.
Okay.
And Keith, I think it's important to say that a lot of your poems are informed by real people. Is that?
Oh yes, these are based on real people in my book.
Yeah. Oh, great. Okay.
Do they wonder about the length of shadows, the gay pair, time snowing their heads? Do they still dream of youth when sex like light was not in question? The face of each in that green time is lost in a pan of water, dissolved, no matter how hard they look again. They have learned the actions of life are limited. Romance happened in Sydney and Zagreb, birthplaces of the old lovers. In Venice, under and over bridges. Paris, where they wrapped legs around the Eiffel, devoured creme de marron after duck confit. Bird songs were jewels. Night was huge hunger for love. They dreamed together after. Came the middle of things, when they argued about perspective, exchanged grudging praise, eyes wandering to other men, other grades of quality. They no longer hinged on each other. Every July, Alexander the Younger jetted to another in Rome, bidding Alan, "Si vediamo dopo." That later happened. Weight shifted. Sound of traffic grew tiresome. Cigarette breaks more frequent. Alex no longer frequented the park across the road to sunbathe in the nude. He took afternoon walks when everything seemed to go silent. Bewildered and tousled, Alan read many meanings of loss. Spring was no longer what it used to be. Each man learned to dream on his own, tilting towards some place in darkness.
Thank you, Keith.
And one more poem, Ivy, from the unpublished manuscript.
Yes.
This
And
one
there-
was also published from the Bannister and based on James Schuyler, a very famous American poet.
Yes, I just now are you moving in? Are you moving into your pieces that were published in Against Forgetting?
That's coming next. This is the
Okay.
last poem from In the Bowl of My Eye.
Okay, excellent. So this is the last one from your upcoming manuscript.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Keith.
So it's called Poem of First Lines from James Schuyler, and of course every line is a first line from that poet, assembled by me. This morning view, there are leaves. The light lies layered in the leaves, a wonderful freshness, air, an irregular rattle shutters, and a chimney, breathing a little smoke, commingling sky. A few days are all we have, so count them as they pass. All things are real, watching you sleep, books litter the bed, clean used ones, of course, dirty socks and dirty sneakers, the shadow of a bird in the garden, sun. Let me tell you, I do not always understand what you say, lying on the bed in the afternoon, and nothing there full of a violent hush and sunbursts. On a day like this, the rain comes. In the sky, a great thought. The wind rests its cheek upon the ground and feels the cool damp. Slowly standing and watching the scars upon the day. The day is gray. Let me tell you, I do not always understand what you say. A few days are all we have, so count them as they pass.
Very good, amazing. Now we will do a Q&A for anyone who's joined us late at the end of Keith's reading, and he just finished reading poems from his upcoming unpublished manuscript called In the Bowl of My Eye. And Keith, now we're going to move into Against Forgetting, which came out with Frontenac Press in 2019.
Yes.
All
And
right.
this is an autobiographical poetic narrative about my Bombay boyhood and then leaving India for Canada and some of the culture shock. And it's very rich in not only family history, but also, contemporary history. And of course, it touches on the Armenian genocide in a lighter fashion than normal.
Yeah.
It's really, it encompasses four elements: earth, air, fire, and water. And I'm just going to read four poems centered around the element of fire. And the first one goes back to an incident in my infancy, because I remember my first memory is of a flame,
Mm-hmm.
So let me read fire.
All right.
Born near water, my sign Cancer, my first memory is fire. Too near a candle on the windowsill, a slow night, thin white curtain, a flame. My baby eyes incandescent, that image violent, read as many sunsets for my first 17 years. The flames laugh high. Sita's trial by fire to prove fidelity. Her ornaments turn to molten gold, flames becoming flowers. Shiva's feet flashing fire. In Bombay, fire was communal. Zoroastrians prayed facing the sun. Their incense wafted holy smoke at dusk. Hindus worshipped Agni in their last rite for the dead, safeguarding the home. A daily rite too for our cook, tall, thin black man with a tight body, who would light matutinal ovens, blowing embers in the kitchen. Or for the maid with coal in her flat iron, hissing radiance for pleats and hems, creases and folds. St. Mary's, where banyans, long-armed orangutans stretch limbs. My head roared, an oven from the sun at noon, ground sucked dry, old, finished mica glinting, clouds curled burnt edges. Monsoon fire and lightning strokes, sudden white on bone trees, brighter than moon milk infiltrating shut-eyed windows. Sepia night, lamplighters with Hecat's torch above barking dogs. Fire, a beast whose fierce breath lived in me, leaping and curling. I could hear the portentous. I did not know then what I would be saying of it.
Oh,
Now, I was a teacher in high school for a while in Montreal, and I taught a number of Vietnamese, I want to call them boat children, because that's what they were.
Oh my goodness.
This one is called Torment. When Vietnam was the sickness in the American soul, holy monks went up in flame, self-immolated. Skin peeled off, children and the old, after the rocket's red glare. Piles of junk burned on bases, less residue than charred bodies clawing through flames. Baby-faced soldiers torched scrawny thatched huts to background music of rock and roll, while generals loved the smell of napalm in the morning, ginning up another blurring day. Raiding all the Orient pearls, multiplying the boat people desperate to flee, advancing Viet Cong, who slid under midnight veils to moon zones puckered by bombs. In the 60s, I taught boat people, whose adolescent minds couldn't shake off seawater, rapacious rapists and abductors who turned sunlight blood orange, nor shake off the acrid memory of smoke and flame floating above jungle and valley. What to teach those tormented by fire and water, forever cursed by booby traps, ready to spring under shattered stars, those who smuggle broken selves which keep tunneling without reaching anything except grief. No faith healer. My words whirled around fluttering bamboo. My English lessons made them stranger in a rumble of sound. Now, the next one.
beautiful. Thank you, Keith.
Yeah. The next one, Reading Ashes, was printed in the Literary Review of Canada in September 2019. And this, again, is a very layered poem. You know, it starts out with my parents and goes on to biblical references, and then profane contemporary references, and then Indian references, finally coming to Armenian references, and a famous Armenian poet, Siamanto, who was killed during the genocide. So, Reading Ashes.
Very important. Ashes.
My parents, chronic smokers, he with nicotine stains on stubby fingers. She petite, more elegant in her puffs. She took care inhaling, exhaling curls of smoke. Did she even think about ash? He, the cremated one, remains in a gleaming urn, more polished than his life. A man with large passions with some heft, fits so easily, little ash. Not a color to cherish, something which smudges like a charcoal drawing. Remember that you are dust, and to dust shall you return. Job, abhorring himself, repented in dust and ashes. Sackcloth Maccabees prepared for battle by fasting, tearing their clothes sprinkled with ashes. Profane ashes are a sacramental joke. Ashes to go for commuters who receive them, seated in their cars, driving by, waiting for a stoplight. After such levity, what wisdom? India's ashen-faced sadhus, grey, powdering naked skin, buried themselves in sand up to their necks. Before I journeyed to my father's homeland, ashes of his tribe fell into my mouth. Half Armenian, I feel kinship with Siamanto and his bloody news, a stranger's soulmate, the same pains of race. Armenian women, veils darkened by death, bones of men fluting eerily, young girls anointed with oil, nakedly set on fire, dance madly in a ring of flame. Ash in my hourglass, no deeper color stolen from the sky, unburying the dead.
Wow, that one has very strong imagery.
It's powerful, yeah.
And finally, a poem called Through Each Day That Falls, which gives you a very vivid picture of Bombay and my life there. All you need to know is I lived in a gated, well, it actually was never gated. It had a gate called the Retreat. And the Retreat lay directly across from an orphanage, which lay next to a brothel. And many of the children born to the prostitutes ended up in that Catholic orphanage. So it's, life of contradictions.
Wow.
Day stands out, residences growing with promiscuous pigeons, passing carts, exhausted horses drawing carriages. Morning picnic into noontime, clanging of ancient trams, wheezing buses, impromptu ballet of jaywalkers. Families clatter with their rousings, morning crackle of ovens, cold glowing irons hiss over cottons, ayahs urging children to dress for school, who like snails go unwillingly, displeasure in their satchels. Icemen staggering up flights of stairs, and watermen with bloated bladders to gush and gurgle in metal barrels the week's family reservoir. Passing among merchants and whores, Vilas's Road, where Hindus adore cows and cobras. Months unalterable, deluged from the heat of sky, never a deep silence and wind, lashing rain, beggar tears, lascivious urgings from cage brothels. The limited seasons unwavering, hours loitering at my feet. Women with powdered faces, rude red lips, rings on toes, bangles on ankles, colored necklaces, hips round as gourds, eyes gathering male gazes in their mirror. I live beside church, orphanage, cinema, refuse-ridden alleys, brothels, other houses, bent coconut trees, green plantain, fruit-burdening pine branches, sparrows, crows, and hawks, parrots shooting feathered green arrows into camouflage foliage, tremulous spiders ceaselessly weaving, ants in slow migration, cats crying in copulation, vagrant cows and pariah dogs sniffing garbage. I, a fellow of special blood, voyeur of couples and spinsters, widows and bachelors, emasculated hijras and amorous girls, a continuous life of trousers, skirts, loincloths, saris, brusque shoes, daily bustle, and sun-baked tedium. Anomalous communiques from contradictory lives. The retreat, residences filled with smiles, sighs, and ashes. So much density of life, so much rot. Thriving bourgeoisie, anguish broken things. Jasmine and cologne mingle with odors of shit and urine. Again, sun invades my mouth, a brusque burning, high hour, more ashes. Thank you.
Very powerful.
Thank you, Keith. Everyone, that was Keith Garebian, the last 4 poems that he read. Let's give a big applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. The last 4 poems that he just finished reading were from his 2019 collection with Frontenac Press called Against Forgetting. Please do order it online. It's available with Amazon, Indigo, on frontenacpress.com as well. And if you just tuned in a bit late, Keith also read a handful of poems from his unpublished manuscript, In the Bowl of My Eye. So let's move into the question and answer period. And if things go a little bit wonky, please bear with me as we're working together here to try and highlight anyone who has a question to ask. Now, let me take a look. Do we have any questions from people? Zora, yes.
Yeah, I wanted to know, like, some of the poems that are very specific to certain people. Do you ever have anything at the end of in your published book, anything at the end to give a little bit of a one-liner background, or never needed that?
Well, I don't think they're necessary, Zora, because I call that section suburban portraits. So obviously they're based on real people.
Right.
And in one poem, you might have noticed, I even mentioned the plaque on the bench for that old couple that lived in the building, right?
Okay.
And, you know, I say very clearly that these poems in that book are about living in suburbia. I live
so you
right
must
on the border.
Yeah, so you must have it in the introduction so that the person knows it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, Zora. That was everyone. That was Zora Zoberi asking Keith a question. And do we have any other questions from the audience members?
I really like the mall, the suburban mall.
Yes. Well,
I like writing it too, but I found the right prologue from Gertrude Stein.
I just pictured like I was there. You know, that was really, really good.
Yeah.
Someone in the chat is asking what the first memory Keith had in writing poetry.
Yes. Oh, thank you, Michelle.
You mean, I don't understand, is it the first memory or the first poetic memory?
Well, we can see who asked the question here. I'm not sure, but whoever asked the question, the first poetic memory.
Wow, first poetic memory. Well, obviously my mother reading nursery rhymes.
Oh, how nice.
That's a good one.
No, yeah. she read to, there were 3 of us, I was the eldest, I had 2 younger sisters, and she always read to us every day. And of course, you know, you can never explain why one person in that family turned out to be an artist or turned out to be a writer with a great interest in all the arts, and the other 2 didn't. You know, the middle sister was wonderfully, should I say, domesticated. She would have been a wonderful wife and mother. She was an excellent cook. She liked to travel. The youngest sister was very good in science, so that was her area of specialization, and she became a teacher. But I'm the only one who turned into a writer. You know.
Great. Yes, and I have another question that came through here, Keith.
So
Sandy Bassey would like to know, how do you choose your poem titles? And also, she has 2 questions. And it says, the second question says, if you write a poem using the first lines of others' poems, are the rules for using others' work as jumping off points? So I think...
Let's take the first one about the book titles.
Let's take the first one, and we can, Sandy can unmute herself at any time.
Yeah.
And let's put this on to Keith here. We'll take what's
Sandy, but I see right there. Yeah, let her unmute herself. That's fine.
Yes.
Well, sometimes the titles suggest themselves from either an image or a line in the poem, you know, or in the portrait it was quite easy. You know, Monday Watcher was the Chinese widow sitting watching the start of the week going by. Suburban Mall, again, that's obvious, you know. And poem of first lines, that's exactly what the poem is. It's a poem constructed of first lines from another poet. So those are easy. Now the more difficult ones are in the book, the autobiographical poetry book, Against Forgetting.
Yes.
There you had to think a bit, and I wanted to be clear in the minds of readers to see some sort of shape, some sort of unity among the poems.
Poetry is that there is a lot of realism in it.
I didn't hear that. Sorry.
There's a lot of realism in your poetry.
Well, I think even though
it's Adam and Arsene where
I was saying there is a lot of realism in your poetry.
yeah, well, a poet might have his head in the clouds, but his feet are on the earth. We live real lives. We have to shop. We have to cook. We have to socialize while we dream. So poetry to me is a way of dreaming. But yeah, I like to write poems which are rooted in reality. I was told that once by, I can't remember if it was a young listener or a middle-aged listener at a poetry reading who said, I like your poems because they're always about something real, something meaningful. And I understood what she meant by that.
And that's definitely something to leave the listeners with, and the viewers, I should say. So Keith, do you want to hold up your book Against Forgetting again?
Yeah.
This is 2019 with Frontenac Press. People can order it on Amazon and Indigo and through frontenacpress.com. It's his latest poetry collection. Thank you, Sandy Bassi. I'll just show you to the viewers for a moment here for the great question. Good call. Keith definitely has, Keith has great book titles. Keith, thank you again. Thank you everyone for this, asking these amazing questions. And now I'm going to introduce our next reader, which is Michelle Hillyard. And Michelle, you're with us. Let me just find you here. Bear with me. And there she is. Amazing. Okay, great. So Michelle Hillyard. And
Don't see her.
she's coming right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, there.
So Michelle Hillyard is an award-winning poet whose work focuses on neurodiversity, mental health, and body positivity. She's the workshop coordinator for the Mississauga Writers' Group and co-founder of the Max-sponsored poetry series, Verses Out Loud, with Paul Edward Costa. Her work has been published in Freelit Magazine, Alt Minds Magazine, and in Brickyard, an online spoken word collection by Brick Books. You can find more about Michelle on thegreatwritenorth.com online, and that is write as in writing, W-R-I-T. And Michelle is going to, and I'd like to say she also won the Marty Awards for Best Emerging Artist in 2019, if I remember correctly. And I'm going to let Michelle get into all of her poems. Let me see.
Thank you, Ivy.
You're welcome.
I will say that the person who did win for 2019 is with us today. It's not me, it's Paul. I won
Yes.
for
2018. Oh, my apologies. 2018.
Okay.
Paul won in the Emerging for 2019. And I should say Keith Garebian won in 2019 in the Established category. And yes, thank you.
Awesome. I'm just going to do a quick check because I have a fan going here. Everyone can hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
If you can go a little higher. Yeah.
Go a little higher on my
That's it.
volume or my video?
No, just your presence.
Okay.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Ivy, for the wonderful introduction. Keith, I could listen to you read poetry all day.
Yes.
I'm hoping to get another opportunity to do so again. Thank you so much for the work that you shared tonight. Thank you very much. It was wonderful. I'm going to start off with a poem whose title was inspired by our host. I don't think she knows this. It's called No Introduction Required, which was how you had once introduced me. And now I can't remember when it was. You said, here's no introduction required, so I wrote a poem about that.
Oh, I think that must have been for the Artistes with Ivy Reiss show.
I think so.
Yes, and we focused on autism, awareness versus acceptance. I thought that was a really important episode, and you read a poem to my younger self, which I think is on your list today as well.
No, actually, it's not.
Well, that's okay. People can find it online.
It is actually available. A video of that is available on the website you quoted.
Yes.
Specifically.
And on your way, yeah, on the Great Right North.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
All right, Michelle, we'll take it away.
So this is no introduction required. A lot of my poetry that I'm reading today is coming from the effects of pandemic, essentially, I guess. It's a lot of the stuff that's been going on emotionally. How are we dealing with things socially? How are we dealing with things mental health wise? How are we all feeling? And that, I think, is going to be enough for this poem.
Okay.
No introduction required. And what happens when you forget to carry the zero? Trip over a dangling participle and shatter into sentence fragments, all curve of open bracket, which is to say, I never compile an overstack, crushed velvet of moth in machine, not parasite, just unfortunate. The apology you tip-tongue carry into conversations. Hello, I'm sorry. Nice to meet you. I'm so very, very sorry.
Wow. Your poems are very, I want to just tell the viewers, because we are going to have a Q&A, to really focus, because a lot of Michelle's pieces that she's reading today are really short, and before you know it, it's over. So we got to really pay attention.
I tipped a little into my IT background in this poem. You may hear elements of that I tend to bring in.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if you know, I worked in a tester as a tester, and so we call defects in codes bugs.
Okay.
And apparently this comes from the fact that back in the day, you would literally find insects in the machines, and you'd have to crawl into them and pull them out.
Wow.
And now we just refer to it as defect as finding a bug, still to this day.
Okay.
So the next poem I'm going to read is Shapeshifter.
Mm.
Again, keeping with the pandemic feel. This is 100% pandemic feel. Shapeshifter. 1,000 slow leaks hide deflation until white noise unacceptable. Sleep or hibernation, each morning a midwinter wakening, as in never, as in not quite twilight, perpetual state of interrupted yawn, of couch lounge dream and milk-bloated cereal sog of neglect. Hit snooze, stream life, a palmed convenience, and hashtag binge watch, hold heart to chest, feel no joy yet purge nothing. Yes, I'm still watching. Yes, I'm still watching. Yes, I'm still. That one goes out to everyone who's ever sat on a couch and watched Netflix until it keeps asking you if you're still watching.
Yes. They want to make sure we're still there. What can I say? Thank you, Michelle. Everyone, that was Shapeshifters. So now we're going into your next piece.
Yeah. So the next piece is called Oxygen is Our Frenemy. It came out of a writing session I had with folks. I'm not a person who tends to do prompt writing very well. No social situations. So this kind of came together out of those two combined together. Oxygen is our frenemy. My insides, all inversion of stomach, all chest cling, afraid to expand, afraid to let go, afraid to allow in, though air is never just air. It's friends with foes, or foes among friends, whichever way I still need to breathe. She says, the best way to let go is to laugh. So I remember, the oxidation that gets us in the end is the same oxidation that gets us to the end. When I remember, I can finally inhale.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Very nice. What's the title of this?
That was called Oxygen is Our Frenemy. Frenemy, friends with enemies, enemies with friends. Essentially, loneliness kills. That's what we hear a lot. And but also what does that mean to someone who has social anxiety?
Yeah.
Is what that really refers to.
Very nice.
Yeah, you have a strong focus on mental health issues in a lot of your works, right, Michelle?
Yes, yes, I definitely do.
And with the pandemic, of course, obviously the isolation can aggravate depression and anxiety issues.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's Michelle, carry on.
So the next poem I'm going to read is called When I Say I Love You.
Mhm.
I often refer to this as my most honest poem. I heard someone ask a question earlier about utilizing other people's poetry for your own poetry. And this is a poem which was inspired by, not that I utilized the words, but is inspired by Rudy Francisco's honest poem. And it's called When I Say I Love You. When I say that I love you, what I mean is, when I see a set of sharp teeth, I'm aware of how I'm only made of flesh. When I say that I love you, I'm saying I've already counted the pieces I will shatter into when I throw myself at your feet. There will be too many. They will never fit back together, because all I know is sharp edges and how to bleed, and that when you leave, there will be blood on both of our hands. I'm not sure if any of it will be mine. When I say that I love you, what I mean is what nourishes destroys. I mean your heart looks tasty. I mean your heart looks like my last meal. Most days I can't tell if I am gravedigger or grave, or if this weight in my soul is an anchor or a stone. But I learned at a young age how to drown on dry land, so when you reach out your hand to save me, I will pull you under so I can breathe. On the days you say you love me back, what I will hear is goodbye. Because right now is the only present I have ever known. And the now when we meet is the same now when we'll see eternity in each other's smiles. And the same now when we will learn forever is an untested theory that will never be proven by us. When I say that I love you, what I mean is everything ends. Though I believe reincarnation is true, because most days I am nothing more than lessons I've never learned breathe back into life. But I have traveled this road before, and I have souvenired these scars. So I conversed with the stars, built temples from the bones of my past, fallen to my knees in this dirt. I've prayed to gods I don't believe in, so I can tell you this time, this love will be different. And maybe it's true. Or maybe it's just a beautiful lie. But when I say that I love you, what I mean is, what I'm saying is, you are worth the try.
Oh my
Wow.
God. That was so powerful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very powerful.
That was Michelle's piece, When I Say I Love You. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
And everyone, we're going to be doing a Q&A period, so I think there'll be lots of questions. And yeah, let's, what do you have for us next?
I will say that there is a line in that poem that says, I'll pull you under so I can breathe, which was actually inspired by a real event in my life when someone was drowning. A very harmless person, someone who was a friend, but when you're drowning, she grabbed onto me and pushed me under because she couldn't swim, because that's her survival.
Wow.
And that hits me every time I read it.
Yeah, even when you were reading, I didn't know the background, but it hit me too. Yeah.
Yes.
Very powerful.
So continuing with our love, this is a poem, right now it's just called Wine Dark. I don't know about y'all. I'm horrible at naming poems. Let alone, like, Keith has great names for his books. That's not even, that's another level for me. I can't name my poems. This was inspired by a friend, poets by the name of Fiora Strali, and they wrote a poem which inspired this one. It's called, for now, it's called Wine Dark. Homer, where are your wine-dark seas? Preserved between pages, pressed and dried to a salt crust of violet, as in blue, as in the heart of a flame, as in her eyes. And we, friends, ships sailed on bodies of water we call by names they will never know, names their currents could never churn into existence, into us, passengers, body pressed to body, this preservation of tide, as in blue, as in love, as in a crash of wine-dark seas.
Wow. Thank you, Michelle. That was Wine Dark.
Yeah.
Another short and poignant piece about
That one is inspired, as I said, by a friend. They had written a poem which essentially said, how do you know things about yourself? For them, it was that they were trans. How do you know this without the language? And it reminded me of how scholars have said that cultures didn't have the word blue because they didn't have a word for it. And that's why Homer calls it wine dark seas.
Interesting. It's true.
Sorry.
Without language, we can't express anything. And in anthropology, often they ask what came first in the evolution of humans in regard to language or other forms of communication. Yeah.
So the next one I am going to perform is one many have heard before.
Yeah.
I think this is one of my Mardi poems. It's called Landfall. Before I met him, I never understood how cold could burn, or else silence could incite madness before the distance between his words grew. Ever since we came into each other's lives, we were always counting down the days until we'd see each other again, then the hours we'd spend together glancing at our cell phones, watching seconds pass until we had to part, then the countdown would restart. The separation burdened. I can hear the strain in his voice. It cracked when he insisted that I had meant something to him. He paused, corrected the past tense. But the heart-bruised realization never left. He had his own countdown. An expiration date he'd stamped on the two of us before he even told me he loved me. Love isn't blind, no. Love sees it all and it makes excuses. So when he went cold and silent, when he blanked himself like a fresh piece of paper, I raked the fine-tooth comb over me to find out why, till his feet folded on the floor, wondering how. I never knew the picture of me he had sketched on his heart was only a portrait of what I would do for him. Houses built on sand collapsed, but this wasn't an end. This was the waves of a storm-tossed sea, salt licking my shores bare to the bedrock. This was me, kneeling at the water's edge, begging for a glimpse of what we had to return to landfall at my feet so I can rebuild. But love is never found where it was lost. My broken heart was not a puzzle to be solved. When I stitched the pieces back together, there was no answer waiting, just scars. And a new countdown. Seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months it would take to heal. No more sand. I was done piling it up to cover my flaws. My rock bottom wasn't pretty, but it was honest and a solid foundation on which to build. I sharpened pencils, graphite gliding over tendon. I drew steel strength and raw beauty on my own heart so I could carry it with me always. Then I raised my voice. I learned to shout above the roar of the storm so silence would never find a home on my doorstep again. And then I lit my flame. I let it blaze even in my darkest corners without apology. I shone brighter than ever before. No longer seeking warmth, I became the source, a ring of fire that cold dare not cross. And now I am the one who burns.
Beautiful.
Thank you,
Heart-wrenching.
Michelle. Yes, heart-wrenching indeed.
Just going to take a quick drink. Right?
Yeah.
With my voice.
Everyone, you just finished hearing Michelle Hillyard read. That was Michelle Hillyard. She just finished reading one of her most popular pieces live, called Landfall. And one of the quotes that I found in that piece quite strong was, "My rock bottom wasn't pretty."
But it
I
was
thought that
honest.
was really powerful. And yeah, I think Michelle's back from having a sip of water.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. There you are.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we've got a couple more pieces coming up with Michelle Hillyard. And the next one, is it Blood Loss?
Yes, the next one is Blood Loss. I will give a warning to this one. I don't
Okay.
read it often, but it is about miscarriage and obviously blood, hence the name. So just take care of yourselves. That's what I want to say.
Wow.
The blood was ours. But isn't that how it's supposed to go? Body stitched inside of body, my womb, my empty hull. I mean, I sang to you. Why didn't I hear the echo? The blood on the bed was ours, not like we, as in we were expecting. It's the mother who always loses the baby after all. The betrayal of belly to ruby stain on the mattress, like God, how Hollywood. Tear-crusted cheeks, black-hollowed screams, inversion of noise that is heartbeat not found. One last look, the need to make sure the grave inside is actually a grave. The blood was ours to share. Now, an abandoned crime scene, I'm still trying to clean up. Red block drops of blood on the tiles, drops in my heart rate, drops of blood by the toilet, drops in my pressure, drops of blood on the carpet, drop to my knees. They say if I lose any more, it will kill me too. As if what was already lost wasn't enough. They say be thankful. It means you can get pregnant, a womb, a ticket, DNC scratched for a chance to play again. They say the baby's in a better place, while I'm still trying to erase the memory of a plastic jar labeled medical waste to burn. I'm told, think positive. Don't spoil the land. Seeds cannot grow in rot. But can't they see? I am the rot, the gain, the loss, the giver, the taker, destroyer, and she who is destroyed, and the we who was ours. Who was she? Who was? Who still is? Still, as in alive, as in the blood, once ours, now just mine. Still, as in I am just as much death as I am life. Okay.
Wow.
Thank you, Michelle. Everyone, that was Blood Loss. And very
You were
powerful.
saying you don't get your titles are difficult, but look at the title. That's just perfect fit for your title,
Thank
for your
you.
poem.
Yes, great observation, Zora.
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier I don't do well with writing prompts, which is very true. But I cut off all my social media recently, and I've discovered that, and I now apparently can. So I had one poem called Symphony lined up here, but I actually wrote one today.
Yes.
Like there should be fireworks going off because I've not written during the pandemic.
I think you should read the one today.
Yeah,
That
it's
will
a
be
four-parter, and the
exclusive.
prompt was worms.
Okay.
The prompt was just worm.
Like the kind of worms you fish with?
Just worm, just whatever you want to take it.
Okay. All right. Okay. And everyone, this is Michelle Hillyard. She just wrote this poem today, Worms.
1. My father pounds the lawn, patchy grass staccato with a dirt-caked drum. I ear strain to grasp the rhythm. The shovel continues like rainfall. Again, 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 again. 2. The store at the bottom of the hill, a crowded junk drawer of convenience, sells worms. The clear plastic jars line Pepsi fridge shelves, dirt and writhing under fluorescent lights. The cardboard square taped to the door reads 10 pour $3.50, 20 pour $6, 50 pour $14. My father asks for 10. Yes, just 10. His English drops, clunky, thudding the faded linoleum tiles. He takes the paper brown bag with a thank you, he says. The cashier slides his change across the counter in silence. 3. There is a wrong way to touch a worm. Slide with the grain as you caress. It will lubricate its panic. Don't mind the mucus. The muscle will relax, elongate, longer, more. The longer the better. Good worms are not cheap. It will settle. It will still. It will rubber band snap under your knife. It will twist, a frantic frying pan dance of blood, earth spearing on sun-aged wood. Save whatever you don't spear. It will live. Close the lid so none can escape. Close the lid so they can survive. 4. The asphalt path dip hoards water, its goosebump surface bearing witness to the unseen rain. It's an inverted aisle. Curls of leaf dodge drops as they sail the collapsed terranium of mud and earthworm bloat. I crouched close. The rain continues, crescendos on my umbrella, a muted spatter of applause around my head. One by one, I pluck each worm from the water, amassing a wriggle of relief in my palm. The rain doesn't stop. It swamps fields, rivers, bushes, oceans, walkways, the puddle shorelines to my boots. I step back, cradle my collection to my chest. Nowhere is safe. And that was the untitled worm poem.
Thank you, Michelle
You
Hillyard.
want to title it Worms?
Good. I could.
Why not? I mean, it works. Everyone, that was a brand new piece by Michelle Hillyard.
Brand new. I have never even read it out loud. Y'all the first.
Wow.
Fresh off the oven.
Thank you. Thank you for a fabulous set. I've seen lots of questions coming through on.
I did have one more poem. Am I out of time or?
Oh, yeah, sure. Is it symphony?
No, it's the Toronto Airport Vineyard Revival.
Oh, yes, there it is. Okay. Yes, let's do it.
Okay.
Okay.
Everything I write about is based off of true life. There's not much I write about that's not based off of something that happened, and this is 100% the case. And one of my favorite poems to read. It's called the Toronto Airport Vineyard Church Revival.
Interesting.
The air vibrates, a fluorescent hum, hallelujah. I sway my arms, trees aside my head, palms up, fingers splayed, joining the canopy, seeking heaven. This time, I am ready. The preacher shuffles closer. This conduit in a cream-colored suit, this receiver of God's landline. I want to tangle myself in the copper wires of his veins until I am electrified, dissolve into photons dancing in the light of the sanctuary. A woman cries out, her mouth a blender of phonetics. The rows of faithful surge, an ocean pulled by her tide. 2 chairs down, a man lolls his head, thumbprint red and angry, pressed between his eyes, rolling to their whites, and the cream-suited preacher draws near. His red tie lies askew over his rounded belly. It rises and falls with each breath like the tongue of a panting dog, but I shouldn't see him this way, so I close my eyes, let the reverberation of an unknown hymn ground my gut. I'm shifting, content settling, hollow, unfolding in my breast. The woman to the left of me falls to her knees, and I tell myself, this time, it's time, I am worthy. He approaches. Right arm, elbow tucked to his side, hand facing forward. Is he taking an oath or preparing to defend? I can't quite tell. I'm too distracted by a bead of sweat trailing down his palm, disappearing up his sleeve. He lifts his left hand, thick thumb extended, guiding the rest to land on my forehead, and I am a field, furrowed and seated, awaiting rain. I am a pile of dry kindling, starving for a lick of flame. I am a river, damned, throwing myself against stone that will not crack. I am still standing. The preacher shifts, grips my shoulders with both hands as if steering a bicycle to crash, but there is no spark of holy in his touch, no internal surrender dead weighting me to the floor, no stirring of my tongue to flutter unknown. No, he's just a man, an external force trying to crush me to obedience. I straighten, and he lets go. The woman beside me collapses at his touch. There is a sickening crack as she smacks her head on the edge of her chair. She crumples into the pile of clothes on the concrete. I look to the man in the cream-colored suit for help, but he's already moved on. That's it.
Thank you, Michelle Hillyard. This was Toronto Airport Vineyard Revival, another true story about an experience. Now, that was an amazing set. Let's move into the questions. I've seen quite a few come through here, and as we've been saying, we have a few Sherry Murrays, which has made it a bit difficult, but I think people are updating their names as we speak. And does anyone have any questions to start off? And if not,
Tell them to unmute mics.
Oh,
yes. Hi, Sandy.
hi.
You had a question come through.
I did. I asked partway through, and I think it was highlighted in some of her other poems. So what I wrote down in the chat was when I was listening to you read about the one that has "When I Say That I Love You," it came across very much as spoken word. I'm just learning the difference between written poetry and how the rhythms go and spoken word poetry, and I just wondered, could you speak to that poem, and if any of there's a couple of other ones, whether or not they were in that genre?
Absolutely. I'm just going to put my headphones on so I can hear the questions better.
Thank you for that question, Sandy Bassi. She is a local emerging poet, and she was just asking Michelle. All right, Michelle, what? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I've studied both page poetry and spoken word, and I actually took a course with. I will always recommend that anyone who wants to do spoken word reach out to Andrea Thompson. She runs courses through OCAD and U of T.
Yes.
She was my mentor, to be honest, and an amazing woman. So the difference for me is I think there's some poetry that belongs on a page that does better, maybe a better interpretation on the page. Some poetry has better interpretation read out loud. The elements of poetry include, rhythm and, the assonance and the rhyming and so forth. And sometimes you can you can put that in while you're on page, but when you can play with it maybe a little bit more when you're doing it spoken as well. Things like pacing and volume and all that kind of stuff go into it. So a poem such as like a landfall, or the last one I just did, I've probably sent them 200 times each, so that I know the rhythm, I know how the words go. It's just something it's very, very practiced.
Yeah, and that's the art of performing poetry, or really through anything with oration. You've got to work on getting the message across with the words, and it's an art form. And well, that was a great answer. Thank you, Michelle. I have a question. Now, I found, especially with When I Say I Love You, which is one of the pieces you read, and also with Frenemy, or Oxygen is Our Frenemy, you really do address a lot of topics in regard to mental health and anxiety, depression. You also talk about autism, of course, miscarriage in your poem, Blood Loss. And you're very good at communicating what your poems are about at events. I've seen you do this. Do you find that a lot of people relate to your poems? I think your tone is very relatable on a personal level. Do you have a lot of people come up to you at events or find that they relate to your subject matter, especially since you are exploring so many important topics?
Yes, I have found that if people aren't directly relating to what I'm saying, they may indirectly relate to it. For example, what I did the first time I think I performed Landfall, ended up in about an hour conversation with someone who had experienced that kind of attachment and longing that happens, but with her father. And or I have a piece many folks have heard called "Look at Me," that does speak to autism acceptance. But it really also speaks to the concept of different is okay. Just because you're different doesn't mean you're broken, which is funny because those are actually two lines from another poem. But yeah, so just there's the specifics that I'm talking about in the poem, but if someone doesn't actually have any kind of relation with that scenario, they can still relate to some of the broader topics, the broader statements of the poetry.
Absolutely. And I really like how you do touch on everyday objects. I mean, even with in Shapeshifter, you explained that the defect in coding, that the defects are referred to as bugs, and you illustrated how that affects a person in the pandemic and with Netflix.
Yeah, that was from two poems. The introduction talked about the bugs, the crushed velvet in the machine. Yeah, and then Shapeshifter with the, which ironically I think I wrote before the pandemic. I had the pandemic lifestyle down before it hit, folks. That's not an introverted writer. This is.
Well, now as Zora Zoberi said, we're in a writer's thinker's paradise.
That's right. I have a question, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this poem that really hit me about the blood loss.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all poetry comes as has a background in inspiration and comes from reality, really. But could you tell us about what prompted you to write that one? It's such a real experience. It's so heart-wrenching.
I'll be honest. When I write poetry, especially if it's something that's longer and something that's dealing with something that's a heavy issue, I try to loop it around, kind of do an upturn at the end. I don't like leaving an audience. I'm personally, I know I'm not saying it's okay for people to do that, but personally, I don't like leaving an audience hanging with a bit of a heavy. So that's why I don't perform that one very much, and it definitely comes from a very raw place. As to why I wrote it, it's the same reason I think why I write a lot of my stuff is that I'm trying to say things people aren't saying or aren't talking about.
It's very rare. It's the first time I've listened to something on that topic.
I don't think I've read anything on it either, and it was very cathartic to write it down. I wasn't able to get it as up at the end as I would like it to, but sometimes that's life as well. And it ends saying that I am just as much death as I am life, because it's exploring this idea where, having or creating a life is something that's supposed to be wonderful, but we don't talk about the fact that that doesn't always work out. And if that's the case, you do become both. You become the creator of life and then the place where it's lost. And it was just dealing with that.
I had an aunt who had 9 children, and at the 9th child, she bled too, and the child survived.
That's great.
I know, and it was just so like one newborn and a 11-month-old and a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old, and it was just dreadful, but it all worked out fine anyway. She's a wonderful lady now.
Well, thank you, Zora, for that question. And thank you everyone for tuning in. It's 8:50, so I just want to say thank you to our feature guest, Keith Garebian. And Keith, thank you so much. He was reading earlier, and I want to encourage everybody to check out his latest collection of poetry, Against Forgetting. You can find it on Amazon, Indigo, frontenacpress.com. And also to Michelle Hillyard, who just finished her reading. She was our special guest poet. Thank you, Michelle. She has published works available. You can find out more about Michelle on thegreatwritenorth.com, which is her website. And Write is W-R-I-T-E. And if you want to hear her talk about autism, definitely tune into the Artiste with Ivy Reiss. We had Michelle Hillyard on there. She reads some more spoken word and talks about autism acceptance versus awareness. A very important topic indeed. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and especially for the Mississauga Arts Council for making this happen. We do have a couple updates. The 26th Annual Marty Awards, which normally would have taken place in May, are accepting ongoing nominations due to the pandemic. And so please nominate people that you feel are worthy of the award. It is a huge, huge event, and we're hoping that in the near future we'll have it soon. And they just launched the Mac Arts Cafe, which is an open mic special online, of course, through Zoom. And that kicks off this upcoming Monday. It will be at 7 p.m. It will be a monthly. The open mic is filled up at this time. However, do tune in. You can find out more on the Mississauga Arts Council Facebook page, Instagram. Follow them, of course, like them. And tune in at 7 p.m. on Monday for the Mac Arts Cafe, hosted with Heather Christine. And finally, there will be a visual art sale, and that will be on Saturday, October 3rd at the Hyatt Hotel from 2 to 6 p.m. And they will be sending out Eventbrite invitations. This will be a real live event. And so definitely keep your eye out for those invitations to reserve your spot, because numbers will have to be limited at the hotel for the art sale. It'll feature local artists, I'm sure, and it'll be fun. And that is again on October 3rd. And yeah, please let us know what you think about this video. Follow Mississauga Arts Council online at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And once again, thank you to Michelle Hillyard and also our other guest, feature poet, Keith Garebian. And thank you everyone for tuning in. It was
and thank you, Ivy,
your host,
for conducting this.
Yes, thank you, Ivy.
Great.
thank you. It was a pleasure. And we'll see you all soon.